One remarkable aspect of contemporary life in southeast Alaska is the rich culture of the Alaska Native people. Archaeological evidence shows that people have lived in southeast Alaska for over 10,000 years. Because of the indigenous people's ties to the land, Congress has passed laws recognizing the sovereign status of tribal governments. As a result, there's a special relationship between the Alaska Native people and federal agencies, like the Forest Service. On the Tongass National Forest, that special relationship takes the form of partnerships and consultations on a number of projects of mutual interest.
There's an archaeological dig going on up on the terrace above the harbor in Kaufman Cove, and it's an excavation by a team of contracted archaeologists and some Forest Service archaeologists, interns and volunteers with a lot of local participation, excavating a site that is at least 4,000 years old.
Terry Fifield has been the Forest Service archaeologist on Prince of Wales Island since 1994. He has a master's degree in anthropology and has worked with both the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the National Park Service.
One of the neat things about this project is that it covers a time frame that we don't have much information for. That period from 4,000 years ago to contact, there really have been very few small pieces of archaeological sites excavated in southeast Alaska, and so what we're doing is hoping to fill in one of the big gaps in our understanding of the cultural sequence in the area.
This cultural site is one of many in the Tongass National Forest. It's located on state land on Prince of Wales Island in the town of Kaufman Cove. This entire area, however, was within the traditional homeland of the Tlingit people of the Ketchikan, Alaska Natives now centered in Wrangell. This dig is more than an effort to learn about early Alaska residents. It's also an example of official consultations that take place whenever a Forest Service activity affects Native Americans.
9 years ago, when the concept of this project started developing, we worked with the Wrangell Cooperative Association and the Tribal Council over there as a partner in a memorandum of understanding that we developed between the tribe, the city, a couple of state agencies, the Forest Service, and the University of Oregon. And it was in that partnership that we developed the research design that was the impetus for getting this project going.
Surprisingly to some, the consultations between the Forest Service and Alaska Natives take place on a government-to-government level. The reasons for that go back a long time.
When Russia sold Alaska to the United States, the Tlingits immediately reacted. They said, we own the land, and if you want to buy it from the rightful owners, then that's what you have to do. You have to buy it from Alaska Native people.
Dr. Rosita Whirl, a Tlingit from the village of Klukwan, is president of the Sea Alaska Heritage Institute and has a PhD from Harvard in anthropology. She's also an expert on Tlingit culture in southeast Alaska.
The Tlingits are very clear in terms of understanding their role as a sovereign entity and also the obligations, the correct relationship that should exist between the federal government and Native people.
The origins of that special relationship come from a variety of laws and policies that identified roles for federally recognized tribes and required consultation by federal agencies. They include traditional patterns of tribal sovereignty, the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934 that established the tribal governments, laws like the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, National Historic Preservation Act, National Environmental Policy Act, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, and more. In addition to the traditions and laws, presidential executive orders direct federal agencies to consult and work with federally recognized tribes on a government-to-government basis. And more recently, language was attached to several pieces of federal legislation directing all federal agencies to consult with Alaska Native corporations on the same basis as federally recognized tribes.
When the federal government initiates an activity that may have an impact on Native culture or Native land, the federal government is required to consult with Native people.
Although these consultations have legal and historic precedents, They also take place for another reason. Both the Forest Service and Alaska Natives have long traditions of resource stewardship. Thus, both use consultations and cooperative programs to accomplish common goals. One part of the cooperation in this case is on-site inspections by representatives of the Wrangell Cooperative Association. Richard Reinhardt Sr. was one who visited the Kaufman Cove site.
Well, that's what Chief Shakes did. He owned all these other areas by his people, not only him.
You know, that's why I do a lot of the tribal consultation and government-to-government work for the Forest Service on Prince of Wales Island. And when we plan timber sales or new roads or recreation sites even, we always send announcements to the tribal offices, not only on Prince of Wales Island, but also Wrangell and sometimes Ketchikan and sometimes Cake, depending on where the project is on the island, so that people whose traditional lands are being affected by our projects know and can comment. That's what it's about, yeah.
Well, before they never did that, and that the government with our native people are doing okay as far as we're concerned, but we always want to know what is going on.
That's right.
And without us, then government to government ain't working.
Site visits are one way to keep the consultations working. The Wrangell Cooperative Association stays apprised of developments at the dig. This offers an opportunity for questions and answers.
Everything cultural from the dirt is all going through these screens.
And there's a lot of firecracked rock. There's some shell here from the shellmen that Cheryl has.
Yeah. Do you find any valuable rock, say, like copper or anything like that?
No, we haven't found anything like that.
A possible slate flake. Somebody was starting to make a tool. This is the piece they broke off. We have what's probably a sacrum fragment. I'm not positive, but a vertebrae, a small land mammal, maybe a deer. These round vertebrae are fish vertebrae, backbones.
After all the digging, searching, and sifting, the actual artifacts are bagged and saved. Later, they'll be cataloged and stored.
Down at the archaeological site in Kaufman Cove, they've been excavating now for 4 days, and these are all the artifacts that they've recovered so far. What you can see here is this very straight edge where when people manufactured slate tools, the first thing they did is rough the tool out into the approximate shape that they wanted the end product to be. So what they would do is take this roughly shaped tool and then rub it across the surface. Oh. And the idea would be that it would smooth all those bumps off and turn it into a highly polished, nice form of an arrowhead or a spear point. So it would end up looking something like this.
Yeah.
So.
In addition to this continuing consultation, the archaeological dig is also used as an educational tool. Local volunteers help with the excavation, and visitors are given tours that emphasize the importance of the site as a cultural place of the Tlingit people and as a source of scientific information.
Kaufman Cove was the homeland of the Stikine Tlingit. It was part of their territory. From some accounts, it would suggest that the Stikine Tlingit were some of the most powerful and populous of all the Tlingit groups. The Forest Service and the state have spent quite a bit of time consulting with the Wrangell Tlingit people, the Stikine Tlingit people, as part of our government-to-government consultation with them. And we want to make sure that we're doing the work in a sensitive manner and it's one that's respectful of their wishes. So we have a representative of the Wrangell tribe here today.
And what I see so far, I'm satisfied with it because I'm a councilman of the native group in Wrangell. And that was our people that owned this area at one time. So so far I think it's all right.
Very good. I think that really is the essence of government-to-government relationship. It's just openly working with each other on these things.
This working together is perhaps most sensitive when human remains are discovered. Terry Fifield was involved several years ago when 10,000-year-old bones were found in a cave on Prince of Wales Island. His actions then still serve as an example of how the consultation process between the Forest Service and Alaska Natives should work.
He immediately contacted all the tribes, and the tribes talked with the Forest Service, and they made a decision, and I think it was a very profound decision. People don't talk about it a lot, but it really shows that when you have immediate consultation, when you have respectful consultation between the federal government and tribes, that good things can happen.
I think they probably brought it up here, and they probably have houses across here.
Over the course of thousands of years of living in southeast Alaska, Native people have gained a vast storehouse of knowledge about this rainforest ecosystem. Those of us who manage the land today recognize that fact, and we're committed to integrating that cultural heritage and that traditional ecological knowledge into today's National Forest Management programs. For the Tongass National Forest, I'm Pete Griffin.